here for a bit of a post-game show. Hang out with you guys for a little bit before we wrap this up. It'll be myself, Alex, and maybe Armin's coming on. I'm not sure if he's going to join us to kind of put a bow here on our Copa America coverage for One Soccer. But my takeaways for this game, I thought Kone was a boss. I thought he was absolutely incredible. I think he's going to be in for a very, very bright year for Marseille. Every time I was watching him today, that was just something I was focused on, is just how his game can improve even further this season under De Zerbi. He was calm. He was cool. He was trying things. They didn't always come off. He obviously had an incredible goal, which will go a long way. Alex and I have been saying it for a while, even under Herdman. We can echo it here under Jesse Marsch. I think the 4-2-3-1 is the way to go. I thought our passing was the prettiest I've seen it for a very long time. I thought that there were so many good instances throughout this match where this team just looked like it was out of such an understanding, which is funny because we didn't have the team that we've played the majority of the minutes with. There were new players coming in, Chouanier, Ahmed, who get huge credit. I thought Richie was good today. Schaffelberg, of course, put in a good performance. I thought when Derek Cornelius came in, he was a wall. He had some big blocks as well, which isn't easy coming in when you're not fully fresh. And then again, at the end of the day, I think Canada fully deserved to win this match. They didn't. They lost in pens. They gave away the late one to Luis Suarez. We can kind of talk about that a little bit later, but I think they should still be very, very proud of their performance. This has been such a fun tournament to cover. Sucks we didn't get third. And with that, we're going to welcome Armin into the stream.
What's up, guys?
I don't know. I just went over some of my thoughts of this game. I don't know if you want to give us some of yours. It's just a little bitter right now. I feel
bitter.
Like I'm proud, but I feel like we
bitter about what? We finished 4th in the Copa America.
But see, the thing that's the tough thing to level is again, you the expectations before of man, Canada shouldn't even be here, and to see them go toe to toe with Uruguay with the quote unquote B team to be leading, that's where it hurts, because it's for Canada right now. It isn't talent. They can go toe-to-toe with Argentina. They can go toe-to-toe with Uruguay. They can go toe-to-toe with France, as they've shown throughout this month. But it's just that extra. They just need a bit more of that mentality, that composure. Yeah. I think Jesse Marsch has given it to them. You can see how much they've grown already. But a good team doesn't throw away a 2-1 lead. A good team doesn't mess around on penalties. It's ice cold. That's what Uruguay did. Good teams win games where they don't play well. So I think that's the next step for Canada against top 10 teams.
I think that was the most Luis Suarez goal I've ever seen in my life. The second that broke, I was like, all right, here we go. And then Suarez tucked it away. And I was like, I've seen this goal 68 other times for Uruguay, for Barcelona, for however many times he's scored across his club career. I genuinely it's heartbreaking. And then of course, the referee gives 5 minutes of added time and then sticks to exactly 5 minutes of added time. When has that ever gone our way? I don't want to sound, upset or bitter about it, but dude, they spent a minute celebrating their goal. And it's the ref's yeah, exactly 5 minutes. That's all you guys get. All right, great. Thanks. But ultimately, overall, you can sit and ruminate and stew on the little things. And I know Jesse Marsch spent a good amount of time in the press conference talking about this sort of the treatment that the team got. And I think he said that they've been treated like second-class citizens almost or something. So, ultimately, it's a major tournament, and we finished top 4. And more importantly, the U.S. didn't, and Mexico didn't. So, from that perspective, it's all gravy, right? We've been playing with house money for a couple rounds now, and it's weird to think that I don't know about you guys. Maybe this is just me, but there's this dissonance at play here, where it's we've watched these guys. And we've watched all these other Copa America stars, right? You've watched the Brazils, the Argentinas, Uruguay, Colombia, all of them. And it's this weird thing where it's one of your friend groups meets your other friend group. And you're oh, you guys are all hanging out in the same room. This is kind of weird. I felt like that from Copa America. I was oh, this is Canada, but they're competing and doing well against not just the Copa America teams, but France and the Netherlands. It's it feels like this is the year where we're finally here. We're in the cool kid club. I don't know, winning the CONCACAF sort of World Cup qualifying octagonal was awesome, and that will always be a very memorable run. But it never really felt like we were at that stage. And then making it to the World Cup, I think, really opened our eyes as to like, oh, okay, there's still another level to go. There's still more that this team needs to do in order to achieve something. I feel like now it's like we can play. We can play with these teams. We can play against these guys. We have opportunities. And it's like now, it's up to the, what's it, like the football gods to like have it drop for us. So, we got 2 years to the World Cup, and let's see what we can do with it.
I think a big important thing before we get to Alex's takeaways is it's one thing, like you said, to make it to a World Cup. That was where the excitement was for a lot of Canadian fans. It's the first World Cup in 36 years. And then just to be humbled and have the third game not even matter. So you really, you showed up for two games, and we didn't obviously play overly well in the final 2 games. The Belgium game was impressive, but at the end of the day, we went home with nothing. It's one thing to be in these big tournaments. It's another to compete and find a way through. Because performances from Canada in this tournament weren't always pretty, but they found a way to get results. And they were seconds away here from finishing third against a top nation like Uruguay. And like you guys mentioned, it was a quote unquote B team, or we split half the team up, and it was a new look for Canada. Uruguay went with their best 11, and we took them right to the very end and lost on penalties. So you can see from the numbers, the TV ratings, the interest here in the channel, the interest with the 180 to 200 people who are in here right now, that this team impressed throughout this tournament. It was such a fun run. We got to watch Canada play at Copa America for 6 matches, and we learned a lot. I'm super proud, but I am disappointed. I'm not going to sit here and look at the chat and be like, I'm happy with our run, but I'm a little annoyed with the way that we finished it. It seems like we could have found it was a naive approach towards the end of the game. I don't know how it happened, and the amount of players we had going forward, it just seemed like we were just letting it kind of be open there for Uruguay to take, and they had a clear-cut opportunity, and then they had another one, they took it. So anyways, Alex, we've been waiting for you. Give us your thoughts on the match.
Yeah, I think I'd probably pick up there, because I think that's what's tough to level for me is that I don't think I needed this tournament to see as much like Canada can go toe-to-toe with top teams, because they've been there for a while, right? Like it's been almost 2 years since they went toe-to-toe with, number 2 team in the world, Belgium. How that was a big moment, and Canada's proven they can go toe-to-toe. I thought in this game they showed a lot of intriguing things about what their future could look like. I think it shows that Jesse Marsch has a darn good bench, and that maybe he could have even used it more during the tournament to make sure that guys were fresh, so that it came to an Argentina game that guys weren't running on fumes. I think he'll have learned from that. He'll know, like, it shows this Canadian team has good depth they can turn to. I love the formation change. I feel like the 4-2-3-1, we've been quietly hinting at it, and I think this kind of validated some of the feelings we had, just in terms of Canada looked so much more fluid. They were playing with confidence, panache, flair. Like it was all the things you want to see from the attack. I thought that was really encouraging. And I like, it just feels like the system is in a good place. On the flip side, again, I think it shows that Canada, they're not losing to top teams or drawing top teams because of talent. I think that's been clear. It's, again, how do they brush that naivety out of their game, where it's something where I get it's Jesse Marsch, it's his style of play. I get he wants to be aggressive. He wants to see the game out. I don't mind that approach. I'm always team like, yeah, Canada could have gone the corner for what? They lose the ball anyways, and Uruguay is going right down their throat. At least Canada put they went for a third goal, so I don't mind that. But also at the same time, I would have liked to see all right, calm things down, guys. Throw a couple guys behind the ball. Defend a little too open for my liking. That's naivety. It comes down to the penalties, right? Of just little moments where, Kone hasn't taken a lot of penalties in his career. Like I mentioned earlier, what we're seeing with stutter stop runners, goalies quickly figure it out. You have to, the best now, it's variety. Like watch some of the best penalty takers like Ivan Toney. Sometimes he kind of varies his run up enough that sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast. He looks at the keeper, etc. Those are all little things. So for Canada, I just think that this experience is going to come. And we have to remember, Josh, we're sitting here looking at this team like Alistair Johnston, Alphonso Davies, Moise Bombito, all these guys under 25, Jonathan David, Ismail Kone, Ali Ahmed, Jacob Schaffelberg, Liam Miller, like the core of this team this term, like other than Eustachio, Crepo, and Cornelius is just about to turn 26. Like most of these guys are under 25. So I think we have to remember that for us, it's easy to sit here like, oh, they should have done this, should have done that. sometimes young guys just need these sorts of experiences. Like for some, like Moise Bombito has just been, for him, his experience this year has been working in MLS. Now he's gone out in a Copa America and be like, oh, that's the level I want to hit. We can't discount how important that is. So I think that's where it's tough to level, because I'm on the side of, you learn from 2022, you learn from the past few years, but you have to remember this is a refreshed team. And for them, they're maybe going through some of those lessons for the first time, whereas we watching this have gone through those lessons 3, 4, 5, 6 times.
Yeah. No, it's fair. And I'm reading through some of the comments here. And it's fun to have the idea that we can be disappointed after a game like this. Cause I'm looking at the comments, and honestly, the biggest one I'm seeing right now is just like, great run, proud, but disappointed on the way that we basically finished this last 5 minutes of this game. That's what we're seeing. Why are we crossing the ball in the 92nd minute? Canada needs to figure out a way to hold on to a 2-1 lead. Great tournament, but bitter finish. We need to keep these 2-1 type of results. So I don't know, what if you had to think, what was the reasoning to either one of you that we were approaching the game like that? Is it just that Jesse wanted to find a killer, that they thought that the opportunity was there? Because you very rarely see in these type of tournaments, especially when it's the last game of the tournament and you're leading 2-1, you see your strikers go to the corner, or you see someone just kill the game or play it ugly or knock it back or just try to kill off time, not whip one in where it can be collected by a keeper or defended. And then all of a sudden you got guys out of position heading back the other way, and which led to an opportunity for Suarez, which then seconds later led to the equalizer. So, I mean,
from my perspective, the smart thing to do, obviously, would have been to try to kill the game. I think if you were any one of those players, both for Canada or Uruguay, and you were looking at those touch lines and seeing Marcelo Bielsa and Jesse Marsch, I don't think there's any turning down the volume on that match. I mean, it's a third place game, and I don't think I've ever seen two coaches who look like they went through the ringer as much as those two did. So, I mean, I understand the intensity, and especially because when you're Canada's perspective, you're seeing all this open space, and all you've got is runners and guys who are somewhat fresh, like Theo Bair putting in work, and you can see and smell the opportunity, and they almost found a couple of really good chances to do so. So I understand why they didn't want to just run to a corner flag, even though it's probably what they should have done. But I mean, yeah, it's just like I said in the first part, it was the quintessential Luis Suarez moment, and you knew it was coming. I think they even said in the broadcast, Stephen Caldwell said, he felt like Dane St. Clair had a save to make and kind of burned through that in the 92nd, and then it's just it's little lessons that they're going to have to learn on how to manage matches, and that'll come with time, that'll come with repetitions, and I think the biggest takeaway that I'm going to take from this tournament, though, is that while Canada might still be in a process of learning and growing, that's fine. I don't think you can put any opponent in front of them at the World Cup that would intimidate them anymore. I genuinely think going into 2026 now, they can be fully confident against anybody they're grouped with. So that's a huge thing for me right now, is you've just come through a gauntlet of 6 games at the Copa America, plus France, plus the Netherlands, and you've performed well in almost every single one of those matches. And at least, if not then you've at least grown or learned something from them. So, I mean, for a World Cup now, which is, I think, the main goal for us, I mean, can you think of a team that they can put in that group with you that would even scare you a little anymore? I mean, granted, of course, you have to respect your opponents, but Canada's pretty much seen the biggest threats that they can see. Literally some of the biggest threats in world football, and they've overcome. So I'm excited. I think this was a great tournament from that perspective. And while it is disappointing to finish 4th when 3rd place is right there, especially because Canada has this incredible history of turning bronze medals into gold. Shout out to Bev Priestman. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. I'll take a 4th place finish. And if you offered it to me at the very beginning of the tournament, I would have snatched that in a heartbeat. So
yeah, no. And I mean, I'm seeing I'm just keeping an eye here on the chat, like I said, and it's been 10 minutes now we've been talking. It's just the same kind of messages coming through, and it's proud, but then it just keeps going back. It's this one hurts. To get to the next stage, we have to be professional in closing out games, play for corners, 10 men behind the center at all times, and the 92nd minute wasn't the time to say F it, we ball. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on that, Alex? Does it go down to Jesse Marsch? Does it go down to the players? I mean, I'm assuming Jesse's giving them instructions, kill it off. I can't say that, but it just makes no sense in a situation like this why we saw that. And I think that's what angers people because I don't understand it. I don't know if the chat does either. It made absolutely no sense in that game management to approach it like that. It came back and it bit us in the butt, and we go out when it really looked like we had control over that match at that time. And I know it's annoying, and it's right in our memories right now is why we're focused on it. It's why the chat is bringing it up. But I don't know. Anything you want to add before we can start maybe focus on some of the, the better things? Because this is our wrap up here for our Copa America coverage. So, or at least our live coverage. So we'll get into some of the good things too. But Alex, final thoughts on the game management towards the end of the game?
Yeah, I think it's coaching. And again, I think one thing worth remembering is that since Canada scored in the 80th, they did not get their foot on the ball at all for the last 9 minutes. So I wonder if also from a coaching perspective, that's one of those where, again, I think with how the game was trending, I don't know. I think there's definitely a lot more they could have done defensively. But I'm wondering also from a coaching perspective, if Jesse Marsh saw that and the corner's not going to give anything. Whereas at least if you're going for a goal and you come close, there's some confidence boost from that. Whereas if you go to the corner, you lose the ball. Canada was already holding on anyways. But I think maybe where it also easily could have been something where things got lost in translation, because probably in Jesse Marsh's head, he's thinking for him, if Theobert gets the ball and goes to the corner, goes to the net, doesn't really change much, right? Something where you might eat a few seconds off the clock. Probably what he was saying was push forward, and he wasn't thinking, oh, 4 guys are going to run forward, 5 guys. Probably in his head, he's thinking 2 or 3 guys go, but keep your midfield pivot back. Keep the weak side winger back. And I think that's what appeared to happen, where it was just too gung-ho almost of you didn't need to put that much forward. But yeah, again, that's the little moments, the naivety we mentioned, where maybe Canada will look back now and Jesse Marsh will sit down when they're going over this game film. I guess it won't be this camp because they'll all go, but next camp be look, guys, this is things where we learn now that in the 92nd minute of a game, so that if this happens at the World Cup, you don't do this, you do this. It's learning moments. But I guess to that point, just to kind of sum up that negative feeling, what this shows is that it shows how far this Canadian team has come, that you can sit there and talk about this naivety, because before it was just can they get to a Copa? Can they get to a World Cup? And I just have to say it's great to have this feeling, because this is the same sort of feeling that when I was watching France at the Euros the other day and they lost, and it was just you feel annoyed that they couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. This is the part of the step it takes towards progressing as a team. And it's great that we're able to sit here and have these sorts of discussions, because while they suck, because Canada should have won that game, don't discount how important it is long term to learn and grow from.
No, I agree, and I'm frustrated, but like I said, this is going to be the end of our Copa coverage, so our live coverage, so we're going to have some fun with it towards the end here. So if you guys want to vent, you can still throw some some frustration in the chat, but we're going to have a few questions. We're going to go around. We're going to ask you guys in the chat as well. I threw one up there because I think it's a great talking point, and I've asked it a few times on X, on stream, on videos. Give me some of your guys' Canadian men's national team players of the tournament, and we'll go kind of in a round. We'll do Armin, Alex, and myself. We'll give one answer. I have a few questions lined up here to kind of wrap up what was such a beautiful tournament. And we can see it. Us three work in the industry, so we kind of focus on numbers, but we see what the interest was like throughout this tournament and what going on a run and what these players have brought. And it was a lot of fun. So my first question for you guys will be just your player of the tournament. Alex, you can begin. We'll go to Armin, and then we'll go back to me. We'll try to say someone else. You can say who you really want, but then give another answer in there. Just make it fun. So Alex, you go first. One player.
Tough. Because now I'm
taking mine.
Well, now I'm kind of team do I want to leave some of the obvious ones for you guys and go a bit off the board? Because you know what? I'll just stick with my guy. I'm gonna go Maxime Crépeau. I think you have to. Again, just the way he stepped up and really took a step forward. Would have been nice to see him potentially push for the Golden Glove. Who knows? Maybe he still might get it. It hasn't been a banner tournament for a lot of goalkeepers, and maybe he still has a chance. But Crépeau really just the calm he gives Canada, the way he fits into Marsh's system, it's all been great to see. And it's a guy who deserves it too. We have to remember after the last few years, and such a great moment to see him step up like this.
Fair. I would be one of mine. Armin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Derek Cornelius. I think of all of the names, I mean, obviously there's Jonathan David, Ismail Kone, and Alistair Johnston's getting some love in the chat, which is awesome. I think everyone played well, but I think the player that most impressed me was Derek Cornelius, in the fact that he wasn't even supposed to start. In fact, there was like doubts about his call-up. I remember like in the build-up to the very first squad call-up, like there was, Joel Waterman, and like everyone assumed Kamal Miller would be the starter. And then here's Derek Cornelius, who we've been talking about forever. I guess you guys have been talking about forever, and we do in our production meetings, is quietly putting up this incredible season at Malmo where he's just doing the work, and then he's translated that form over to the national team perfectly. Like, was he perfect? No, not necessarily. But for a player that wasn't expected to start, for a player that is in a position that Canada has historically struggled in, and for a player who's now also been paired with Moise Bombito, who's, really new, still learning just what it's like to be called up to Canada camps consistently or playing in tournament settings. The fact that he was able to lead like a center back partner through all of this at the same time as putting up these incredible performances, solid defensive showings, clean sheet halves, like throughout most of the tournament. Like, Max Crepeau deserves a lot of credit as well, but I think between Cornelius and Bombito and Alistair Johnston, that back line did things in a Canada shirt that I don't think we've ever really expected of Canadian defenders. And I think they also did it in a really calm, comfortable, quiet, just hardworking kind of way, very Canadian kind of way. And so I'm walking out of that like Derek Cornelius needs a move, and he's my player of the tournament for Canada.
It's a fair shout. If I had to go with one, I would probably lean towards Crepeau. I think Alistair Johnston is another one that deserves a shout out. None of us picked him, but quietly had a huge tournament. And the thing I like about him is, we always talk about his leadership, but even today when Luc de Fougerolles was kind of having a tough time and working his way into the game, when he started making a big tackle, the first thing you saw, and I think we saw it 2 or 3 times, was Johnston go up to Luc and just give him a push and just get him energized, get him excited, just being that presence that we know that he can bring. And I love that about him. I thought he had a great tournament, but you guys left the most obvious shout for me. So I'm going to say Jacob Schaffelberg. He came into this tournament. I didn't think he was going to be a starter, and he wasn't. It was Liam Miller. I also thought then all of a sudden he was going to find himself into this super sub role, which is what we've seen at the Gold Cup and some recent appearances as well. I just kind of thought that's the way it's going to go. And then when he was given an opportunity, I feel like if he didn't score that goal and have an impact on the game, he might have found himself back on the bench. But he showed that he can be an impact sub. He showed that he can be an impact player from the beginning, and he was kind of rewarded here at the very end with all 90 minutes, which was great to see. I think he's electric. I think he's direct. He's fun. He scored a goal. He got an assist. He was a big time player. And I think moving forward, when you look at Canada's best 11, I have him penciled in there down the left-hand side. And it's been an exciting tournament for him. And if he gets a move this summer, it's definitely because teams have taken notice. So we'll move on to our next.
Before we move on, I do want to also give a shout out to 3 other players who I think deserve it. Jonathan Osorio, Ali Ahmed, and Matthew Chouanière are all, 3 MLS guys, one for Toronto, one for Montreal, one for Vancouver Whitecaps. And all 3 of them played incredibly throughout the tournament, especially Ali Ahmed in this last game. And I thought Matthew Chouanière had his best game today as well. But all 3 of them, incredible performances. They can walk out of this tournament with their heads held high. And I think it really does show that as a league, Major League Soccer is developing quality players. Like, I know we are, huge proponents of the Canadian Premier League here. And I think that comment by Kosi Thompson a little earlier might have ruffled some feathers about the MLS versus CPL thing. But Jonathan Osorio is the definition of an MLS player, like from the beginning of his career to today. And he put in like solid showings against some of the best midfields in the world and didn't look out of place. And Matthew Chouanière today, I thought, was so comfortable in his passing. It was incredible. And Ali Ahmed is young and confident. And like, these are all products of, like, genuinely products of their MLS academies or their MLS, development systems. And all 3 of them, I think, deserve a shout out for it, because like 10 years ago, would we be saying MLS players would be able to compete at a Copa America against the kinds of players that they did? I don't know. So
I think it's funny because when I'm looking at the best 11 going forward, I mean, look at maybe Crepeau and Nets, the back four: Johnson, Bombito, Cornelius, Davies. I have Kone, Eustachio, I have Schaffelberg, I have Buchanan, and I have David up front. So I had a question mark about who's going to be that third midfielder, and you just named the three that were in my mind. Chouanier could go in there, Ahmed could go in there, and Osorio could go in there. You could also put Tanny up front, like kind of Alex talked about. So you mentioned you mentioned three players that came out and had big showings, which means that they could potentially fight their way into starting 11s moving forward, or at least
the starter will always be from the team that wins the Canadian Championship. Let's just add that as like a bonus. Yeah. So whoever
right now it's Ozo or Ahmed. Sorry,
Ahmed's gonna have a good look there. He seemed pretty.
Or
confident.
It could be Kyle Becker. Let's see what happens in the second leg.
Tristan Borges or.
We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think Ali's got a good advantage there. But this comment here is going to transition into our next talking point, which Johnston shouting in Luke Fougerol's face was my favorite moment of the tournament. That is the next question here. Our favorite moments of the tournament. That was a hilarious one. It just speaks to the character of Alistair Johnston, and it's the reason that he's a fan favorite. And on the no context CanMNT, it's always
That's
Johnston's
the favorite moment right there. It's just
always,
no context CanMNT.
Yeah, he's had a superstar performance there. But Alex, we'll let you go here. What was your favorite moment of Copa America?
Oh, that's a good question. Favorite moment. I would just say the way Jesse Marsh has collectively gone from why are we hiring this American to people are willing to go out and fight and die for this guy. And I think it's a credit to just how he's immersed himself in his job, what he said, how he stood up for his players, the way he's handled himself on the touchline. I think he's really, it's been great to see. And he's provided a lot of fun moments just with his candor and his personality on the sidelines, but also just for me, that press conference before today's game was just all-time stuff for him to go out and just, you don't really see that from, anything associated with Canada. It's always Canada, the nice guys. We're just happy to be here. We talk funny, et cetera, et cetera. And Marsh has come in and he's brought a bit of that American arrogance, but the right kind. It hasn't been there's good American arrogance and bad American arrogance. And he's brought that good of yeah, guys, have some swagger. You guys are good freaking soccer players. You play at high levels. You've been good as a team. Go believe in yourselves a bit. And now they've gone. And I just love how it's been fun to see the people are Marsh doubters have been saying I've just loved the way he's gotten it. And I think that's something that, it's going to be fascinating to see where he takes this team going forward, because certainly, the man has some strengths, the man has some flaws. He's like any other human in the world, but it's been so far great to see how he's been able to mold his image of this Canadian team this tournament.
I think that's a fair shout. Armin, can you top that?
Someone in the chat has it. Meru Munn says Coney kicking the ball at DePaul.
Yes.
Yeah. As a single moment, I think that was the funniest, just because his face while doing it was just it was perfect. But for me, I think as a I guess a takeaway or something that I really liked from this tournament was just the fact that South American coaches and fan bases learned that Canada is not a scrub on paper team anymore. And specifically, I think it was the Peru coach that had those comments about Canada uses excessive force and they're physical and they need to be stopped. Someone stop these physical it's just the most ridiculous quotes. And I think it's a product of genuinely being somewhat intimidated now of Canada. I think Richie Larea is a prime example of a player that can get right under players' skin. And I really liked that part of his game. So I thought every time it happened, it was fun. And not to hog too many of the moments, but I mean, the moment that was the most, I think the coolest thing to see was Jacob Schaffelberg scoring and then throwing up the Tejan Buchanan jersey. I thought that was really cool.
I just want to say though, I'll amend Peru coach saying we will have our fists ready. That for me was an all-time. What world does a coach say that about another? That was too good.
You guys are not leaving me with much, but you guys didn't touch on the two Kone moments I was thinking about was today. I mean, that goal was, it came out of nowhere. We had our, again, quote unquote B team. We went down early. I was oh no, are we in for a long night here? And all of a sudden he scores that goal on the fact that he's been great this match. He was great against Argentina. It was just a professional performance. And honestly, like the first thing that came to mind was I'm excited to watch him this year at Marseille. I don't know why that was my first thought, and I told Alex that right away. I'm like, I'm just picturing him now at Marseille under De Zerbi, and I'm just getting excited. But also his penalty winner was just the way he took it, the celebration afterwards, cold as ice, meant that we're guaranteed 2 more matches. Really exciting moment. So I know now Kone's had an up and down tournament, considering, he was dropped for a couple matches. He missed a penalty at the end. That's the way football works. But I mean, he's a talented kid with a very, very bright future, and I'm excited to see what he can do at Marseille. A couple more questions for you guys. Whose stock has rose the most among Canadian men's national team fans, do you think? So not really our thought, but I guess take a look at what we've seen on X, which has been a lot. I mean, I'll go first, so you guys can, you can do a little bit more thinking. I'm just gonna go right to Jacob Schaffelberg. I think that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Shafts went up the most because, one, he's got a beautiful mullet. We know that he's a fan favorite in Nashville. We know that he's already a fan favorite. And I think the fan favorite in the Canadian space came from the Gold Cup. That goal against the US, I really just started getting people excited. He's got a great personality as well, if you've seen him in interviews. And all of a sudden, he's just, like I said, he's sketched himself in the starting 11 moving forward. I loved everything about his game, and he's, I think, a player that will be a fan favorite with the Canadian men's national team fans, and the stock has definitely rose. Alex?
I'm going to go Moise Bombito, because I think he's definitely been a name that we knew of. We were sitting here, at least, singing the praises for a strong start to the season. Someone who immediately you could see has a long-term future. But it's one thing to be a guy who on paper has the talent to make a step up. It's the other thing to be actually dropped in and do it, to see how he's done it and just be so cool. Like, for me, it's the mentality that you can't phase the guy. Like, you really can't, no matter what happens. Like, Argentina, poor guy has a, bit of a shaky second half, makes a tough tackle on Messi, has to deal with disgusting racist abuse. Doesn't bother him, just smiling the next day, just going at his job, water off the back. Yet Chile gets a yellow, is struggling, looks like is it time to take him off? Nope, just like ice cold, finish the game excellent. Like throughout this tournament, step up to take a penalty in both games. Ice cold both times. He's getting iced by lasers against Venezuela. Here, his own keeper accidentally iced him by throwing away Rocher's water bottle. Ice cold. I just love his mentality where it's like, no matter the highs, no matter the lows, it's just next play, next moment. And like that sort of ice cold character at the back, like people love that. And it's like, has Canada had a personality like that at the back in terms of center backs? Like Canada has had some decent center backs over the years, some pretty darn good ones, but just that mentality, that ice cold mentality, a lot of, off the top of my head, I'd struggle to think of it. And I think that's Canadian fans have come to love that over the tournament.
That is fair. Armin?
I'm going to stick to the ice cold thing. I know it might not be the most obvious pick because he did get a little bit of criticism throughout this tournament, but I'm going to say Jonathan David because he scored. And I think he's like the fact that he scored in a tournament twice when so many people said, oh, he needed to do more at the World Cup or this or that. Like there's so much talk. And the reason why he celebrated with the hand flapping is like, I feel like of all of our players besides Alfonso, he's the one who gets the most criticism. I think him and Kyle Larin, but like he keeps scoring. And granted, it's not every single game. And if a striker can score in every single game, they'd be called probably Luis Suarez or some level like that. But to me, I mean, what more can you ask for besides the fact that he's finding the back of the net? He's also shown that he fits into a Jesse Marsch system. Guy is a workhorse. Like he would not stop running, and he can play in different positions. He's running down the wing sometimes, like on counterattacks. Like to me, Jonathan David showed that there's a part of his game that if you can find ways to get the ball at his feet and find the best way to actually utilize him, he can be a very top threat in this sort of setup. So I'm going to say Jonathan David because I think he proved a lot of people wrong. And while he didn't have the best tournament, I still think that, I mean, I'm also picking guys that you guys haven't said, but I think he's worth a shout as well.
All right, next question. Try to be, what's your dream summer move for one player? So pick one player that you guys think is due for a move, and then give a destination. I'll give you guys some time to think about it because again, I'm I don't know if you have it off the tip of your tongue, but I do have one. And it's, again, I'm going right back to the well. I'm going back to Jacob Schaffelberg. I don't know if it'll be easy considering how much Nashville rate him. And I don't know if it will come this summer, but I do think that there's just, considering Joshua Cloak put out the article linking him to the Netherlands, PSV with the CONCACAF link, and the fact that Chucky Lozano has left and there's an opening right down that right-hand side. He can also play on the left. And I really think that he would suit that league. A dream move, though, would for him, for me, would be to go to the Bundesliga. I feel like they're, maybe like a Wolfsburg, Gladbach could be a nice little destination, but I'll go Schaffelberg, PSV, and I would love the move. Does one of you two have a thought for a player?
I'll just, I'll stick consistent. I went with my last answer. How long have we sat here being like Canada's defense, the defense? You remember when John Herdman accidentally called them a tier 3 defense with a tier 1 attack? Like, how many years of, Canada's never going to win. They don't have defenders, yada, yada, yada. Finally, it feels like between, of course, Derek Cornelius, but Moise Bombito have stepped up massively. And Cornelius is already playing in Europe. I think his future is going to be assured, like in the sense that Malmö, people watch Malmö. For me, it's Moise Bombito. Like, Colorado Rapids, it's a hipster watch. You're not sitting there like, oh, this is the Miami of MLS where even the casuals are watching it. It's a hipster watch. And I think Moise Bombito, just the potential for him, we continue to say it, his height, his speed, his mentality, everything, you can't teach it. And I think it would be great for him to take a step up because he definitely feels like he's going to be massive for anything Jesse Marsch does. Bombito is going to be a rock at the back for the next 5+ years minimum. So get him a move. And I'm saying Liga is perfect for him. He won't count as an international. Maybe Lyon might be a big, too big of a step, but go prove yourself at like a Stade de France, something like that. Where I know, or Lens. Lens has actually done a very good job of giving shots to MLS talent like Frankowski and other international talent. Go get yourself to Lens and go launch your career in Europe.
Armin?
I'm going to say Kyle Larin to New York Red Bulls.
Oh.
And
backtracking, eh?
I don't think so. I think Kyle Larin has built a national team career despite his club form. I think like that, like even when he's not in great club form, he'll come into national team camp and do well. But I think it's time that Kyle Larin found a situation where he can consistently find the back of the net in a system that's familiar. And frankly, like I think he's at a stage in his career where he also has to make a decision. Like right now, I think the Valladolid move was good, but the Mallorca move, like it's not been as effective. And I think a return to MLS might be his best play. If you're in a system like the New York Red Bulls, you're familiar, I guess, to a certain extent with Jesse Marsch's system. But more importantly, I think if Kyle Larin's scoring 15 to 20, 25 goals a season, like we know he can in an MLS environment, I think he comes into the national team with more confidence, more potency. And I mean, like, I know we love the idea of players going to Europe, but it's about like how much opportunity are you given and how many minutes are you given? How frequently are you scoring? Those are all important factors too. So I'd like to see Kyle Larin in an environment where he's just scoring all the time, because we know he can do it. And we know that if he's in the perfect setup, like in his previous club, he's capable of being a top player. But like, it seems like the winds of, change sweep through his career so frequently that it's time for him to settle down somewhere, lay down some actual roots, and just find a way to just be a goal scorer and take that form into the Canada national team environment. That would be my shout. I know it's not like the celebratory move that, most of these Canadian national team players are now looking for. We'll be celebrating Ismail Kone to Marseille and hopefully a few more transfers, Jonathan David, maybe Alphonso Davies to, Real Madrid or something. But I just want to see Kyle Larin, thrive. And whether that's, in Europe at a better, like a different environment, or back in MLS where we know he can crush it, that's my pick.
That's interesting, because just to hop in on that quickly, what's worth noting is that the discussion gets tougher when it comes to guys who are 27, 28, 29, because I think a lot of times you want younger guys to go to Europe, 1,000%. Like, I want Bombito to go to Europe because he's got so much to learn. You got guys who want to go to Europe. There's so much to learn. Kyle Larin's kind of learned a lot of what he can learn in Europe. Like, he's faced a crazy amount of adversity. He's scored goals. He's slumped. He's been a hero. He's been the GOAT, and not in a good way, for clubs. Like he's kind of seen it all, and at an age where he's about to be 30, he's kind of seen this development. I think it's something that's worth noting that you go to MLS. It's not like a death sentence for your career anymore. Like there's some pretty good players who've gone MLS. Like Messi's still earning call-ups. He's still been pretty good this tournament. Of course, it's Messi, but I think it's worth noting that sometimes for guys at a certain point, it's always about minutes. We always say it's about minutes. Sometimes it's better being MLS than in Europe because of minutes. So for Larin, if for him, all he needs right now to be at his best, his goals and confidence, that 1,000% makes sense. And I think it's been interesting to see because there's been guys too, like there's a reason why guys like Adekubi, Larea have come back. Like Larea was fantastic all tournament. That's an MLS guy who hasn't even played all year. He probably realized he kind of hit where he could hit in Europe. I mean, he didn't get much of a shot, to be fair. It doesn't mean his career is over, that he's useless as soon as he comes back to MLS. I think it's worth noting sometimes, especially when it comes to guys in mid-20s, 30s. Crepo's an exception because I still think he has a lot to learn, but especially when it comes to other players, I like the idea.
That's fair. I mean, we have 13 MLS players on this roster, and a lot of them played a big part of this team.
Just do not go to TFC. So I picked the Red Bulls because I was like, I need an Eastern Conference team that, you know, is close enough to Toronto that they can fly in whenever there's a national team game at BMO. And
I think NYCFC might make
Julian de Guzman's their technical director, so easy call for him to Larin.
And I think that Red Bull kind of thing, like I know you're never going to turn Kyle Larin into a pressing machine. He's never going to be that, but I think he did show that he's willing to do some of the work that is involved in that. Maybe, you know, he can find, okay, well, if I'm not going to be that kind of striker, let me at least learn what the kind of overarching philosophy is of this and see where I can fit in. I also think the Rebels are a good team. So
yeah, no, they got a fun manager who plays a similar style to what Jesse is doing.
And if this move happens because of this video, I want my cut. So I don't know, like 2%.
Guzman. You know what to watch.
Yeah, Julian's watching. All right, guys, final question for the stream today. What are the next steps for the Canadian national team to take advantage of what they've learned this tournament and looking forward to 2026? What have you seen that has encouraged you in that regard? Alex, this was your idea. Do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's, you know, important because we get so caught up in the moment, right? Like we're pissed that Canada lost to Uruguay. You're frustrated about the tactics and yada, yada, yada. At the end of the day, this tournament was always about 2026. Of course, the U.S. guys got mocked because they put too much focus and they're saying, oh, it's 2026, 2026. Like, guys, don't forget, you still have a tournament to play. But ultimately, from a macro, big level, Jesse Marsh is sitting here and he learned a lot from 2026. And so I'm very curious to see what he does going forward, because I think a few things we learned is that, again, Canada talent is there. I think depth is there too, that he needs to continue to push and grow his depth. And it's an advantage that now he has 20 to 30 guys who are pushing it in teams. That list is growing by the week, it seems, with these kids coming out the woodwork. Use them to your advantage. If kids are pushing, make sure that guys know that their spot isn't safe, that, you know, this isn't Canada 3-4 years ago where if you're in the top 23, you're in the top 23. So I think the depth is a big one. You know, otherwise, I think just mentality, what they learned can be huge. I want to see them go and apply this of, all right, like you can't really, against teams like Uruguay, you can't sleep for a minute. How do you apply some of that killer mentality in games going forward? And other than that, I would say just continue to show that, you know, the guys that knocked on the door and show they deserve a shot this tournament, build your core around them. I think that was one thing that was frustrating about last year's Nations League final loss, was that Canada didn't just lose, but they lost with the core of 2022. And that core had kind of clearly gone past their best before date. Whereas now this team is young. This team has so much to learn. You know, ride this group to 2026. They can absolutely do some damage. So for Jesse Marsh now, this fall is crucial. Don't let the momentum stop. Show what you learned. Let these youngsters continue to grow and go from there.
I'll piggyback off of that because you made a lot of good points. This team is very young. We talked about that. I also think it's going to be important after a big tournament like this, and just seeing that Jesse's coming in at the right time when players are going to get moves. You know, if Cornelius gets a move, Bombito goes over, Schaffelberg goes over, Kone goes over, all of a sudden this team, you got players that are playing at some of the highest level spread across Europe. they'll just keep getting better and better. And when they come to Jesse, hopefully he can take that, what they've learned now from their new clubs and their new environment, and put it towards what they are trying to do in 2026. And in terms of this tournament, I mean, I didn't really notice it until I just kind of looked back on it. We won 1 match and we lost 2 and we drew 3. Obviously winning 1 in a penalty shootout and then losing 1 in a penalty shootout. But at the same time, Jesse came in only mere weeks before this tournament even started. Many didn't even have us going there. So I could just picture Jesse after this tournament sitting at home and kind of going like this and like, let's take a look at what I just learned, because I just got thrown into the deep end. I didn't know this team overly well. I tried my best to get them prepared, to get them to do what I thought needed to be done in the situation to get a result. But now we can look back and learn and hopefully find a way to like adapt and find out ways to close game, to win game, to make them play a different maybe style, to look at what can work. Like, he didn't have a lot to do. So I think what he did in this tournament, from what he had to work with, is super impressive, but I think he's going to learn a lot. And I think the reflection period is just going to be incredible to see what he can do going forward. And hopefully by 2026, with a couple more years under the belt now, this will be a very different looking team with players playing in probably better leagues, better clubs, and he'll be 2 years on the job. So I think honestly with this performance, it's only up from here, from the players and the manager's perspective. 2026 and Canadian soccer fans should be very excited, because we could hopefully do something special like we just did in this tournament on short notice. Armin?
Yeah. As the social media admin, I've learned over the last few years that generally speaking, the comments and the supporters know just as much as we do. Like, to be honest, we are talking to a very educated soccer audience. So I'm just going to go through the comments here, because a lot of what I wanted to say, these people have already said. So Irv Blitzer says, hopefully Corbiano can get a lot of minutes at Granada. I think this speaks to Jesse Marsh's next assignment. He spoke about how he's going to go check out a Forge FC match on Sunday. And I think that's going to be his work is, okay, what else do I have out there? I've already unearthed this on a very limited pool of sort of observation of talent, but there are a lot more Canadians out there. So is there anybody else that I need to be considering for this squad? So that's number one. To that point, recruit Ryan Gault to Canada.
I like that.
I don't know if the timing works. I think we've done the math on this.
Just around 2026.
So Prime Minister, if you're watching this, please just expedite some whatever the paperwork is. Let's make this happen, because I think that would be a great option at that number 10. The next comment I saw here, Jade Nelson, another good shout here. I mean, I think it's really going to come down to, who's in good form, who's playing well, what other options are there, and then a couple of dual nationals as well. I know Kolyosha remains kind of in the mix. Daniel Jebison remains kind of in the mix. So we'll see. And then this, I think, is a super important one. Keep booking fire friendlies. Mm-hmm. Like, great shout here from Faux I think genuinely, like, one of the best things about the build-up to the Copa America was the fact that we booked these 2 massive matches against France and the Netherlands, and that has to keep going. I think the Copa America shows the rest of the world that Canada is worth booking a friendly against. That's awesome. Most teams are going to want to pit themselves against other opponents, and especially the more varied opponents you can get your kind of team to play against in the build-up to a World Cup, the better. So they're going to look at Canada as like, this is not just another European team that we've played before in Euro qualifying or this or this or that. This is an actual test for our whoever it might be, whether it's England or the winner of Euro 2024 Spain, for example. They could want to play us. And then I think the other thing is, because we don't have a World Cup qualifying in this cycle, like, we genuinely need these matches. We need as many high-profile matchups as possible. So Canada Soccer's next piece of work as they build towards the World Cup is going to be a lot of administrative stuff. It's booking these matches and making sure that Canada continues to play.
Here's another one I like, just to throw it in.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just saying, I like this.
Yeah, next steps.
Yeah, go for it.
2 pieces of silverware, Nations League and Gold Cup. That's right as well. We do need to actually hold a trophy in our hands at some point. And I think my next point was ultimately going to be like, these next 2 games against the US and Mexico, I need us to win a big match. I need us to win a match in a big way. Like, we got to win like a game like 3 or 4-0 at some point, just to have that we're balling out kind of moment, like. When you're playing against these kinds of teams, it's such a battle. Every game feels like an away game, and it's not just a hot environment on the field, but also like it's hot there. So it's like, it's already tough. And Jesse Marsh is demanding so much of you, but eventually like I want to see it all come together and just like a confidence building big result against one of these teams, followed by a really solid showing in a tournament setting where we actually host the trophy at the end. Like that would do wonders for our confidence. And then lastly, I think the other thing that Jesse Marsh needs to do, and I guess every single player needs to do, is hit the gym. I mean, like he's said it a couple times, he's hinted at it a couple times. I'd love to pick Jesse Marsh's brain about what those fitness levels actually are. Like I'd love if a reporter actually asked, like, have you done fitness testing and how far behind are people? Like, it's such a strange thing. You don't really hear this a lot in world football, as managers saying like my players need to get faster, stronger, fitter, unless like, you know, a new signing shows up like 20 pounds overweight or whatever it might be. But like, I'm very curious to see like, okay, what are the physical demands that Jesse Marsh has of these players? And, you know, he's talked a lot about how the hard part is now going to be taking a back seat while everyone goes back to their clubs, but he really wants to stay engaged with these players while they're at their clubs. So what does that mean? You know, and maybe is it something we'll notice? Is it something we'll see like the next time they come around? Are we going to see a faster, stronger Canada? Is it going to be something noticeable? Are we going to see less burnout, for example? So a lot of those kinds of questions, a lot of administrative stuff. I think it's a lot of like behind the scenes work. This is the nitty gritty of being a manager. And I think this is the part where Jesse Marsh can finally take a breath, like you said, Josh, and like, okay, what do we have to learn? What did we gain from this? But also, now that I'm out of this pressure cooker, how can I actually get to work on the job of preparing this team for 2026? So as a tournament, an incredible showing, super proud of Canada. I think we shocked the world, and that's amazing. But now is about perfecting what we've put together and, you know, making sure that when that World Cup comes around, we make our country proud just the same, if not better.
I think we will.
Just a point too. I hope this is a huge time, I think, for Mauro Biello, and this is a bit random to throw out, but it's for dual nationals because we'll continue to call him the dual national whisperer with all of what you dual nationals have said. But also, I just single him out because this is very similar to how Canada felt after the World Cup, where it was like so much progress. You need to go win trophies. You need to go recruit more dual nationals. You need to show that you can beat the best, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that's all there, and they kind of got lost in the weeds, and then off the field stuff kind of got in the way. Like it was just 2023 was a rough year on so many fronts. Now, for the first time since 22, it feels like they're back to that good vibe that was there, and even better, right? Because they actually went out and got some tangible results. You got some tangible progress. Plus, this team did it with a younger crop of players, a new manager. So there's always the question of, had John Herdman perhaps reached his ceiling with that team at that point? And in hindsight, you can say that, although, to his defense, a lot of factors certainly didn't help him. But now you got a new coach who's just at the beginning of his reign. You've got young players who still have so much growth to do. I think a guy like Mauro Biello and people who've been around are crucial to, now make sure that they learn from the mistakes they made in 2023 and make sure that when it comes 2026, they can look back like, man, remember 2023? What a weird year that was. Like 2024 was great, made the semis of a Copa, and then 2025 we won a Nations League, and remember when we won the Gold Cup, and and then you're heading into the World Cup filled with confidence. Because I agree. I think for Canada now they have such a crucial next 2 years where they can take so many steps forward, and I think all of the things you mentioned, Armin, all the things you mentioned, Josh, like if they can, that was all there though a few years ago. So now if they can learn from those mistakes, that's huge. Because what did they always say? People make mistakes, errors happen. It's how you learn from them. And I think the fact that they're now back on track, just keep this train going forward.
Well, I think the immediate next thing, like I know we just set a lot of big 2-year goals, but I think the immediate thing that they have to do next is just destroy the US. Like, just please, let's
Jesse just smiling away.
Let's just get that like kind of storyline going, just of Jesse Marsh putting up like 4-1 on the board and just walking out of that stadium like, yeah, I did that.
We'll see if they got the friendly coming up on one.
They won't have Greg to do it though.
They won't have Greg.
Marsh will want to put a 4-1 on Greg. So whoever the other guy is, just find someone who Marsh doesn't like.
It'll be Jimmy Conrad, and it'll just be banter, and it'll be great.
It could be Shrundalo, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, no, the next few years is going to be a lot of fun. It's a great time to become a Canadian soccer fan. this tournament, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I had from this is that this tournament got a lot of attention, and we're here for it. But the football doesn't stop just with the men. The men is very exciting to see what the next 2 years can bring. This transfer season will be hopefully a lot of fun. We have the women in the Olympics coming up. We have the CPL. We have the Canadian Championship. There's a ton of content coming up here on One Soccer. So if you guys are new to the channel, subscribe. We're Alex, myself, and a bunch of other great people that work for this company are going to come and try to give you guys the best content we can around the beautiful sport in Canada. I hope you guys all enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed this 3 and 15-ish minute watch along. It was a lot of fun. Degree, appreciate the sponsor on the watch along and the post game show today. Armin, I appreciate you coming on as well. It was a lot of fun, and it wasn't the result we wanted at the end of the day, but there's a lot to be proud about, and I feel a lot better going forward than I did going into the tournament just before Jesse Marsh. So it was a lot of fun, guys, and we have a lot more content to come. So drop a like on your way out, drop a sub if you're new, and thank you, guys.